Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about Children of Time by ADRIAN TCHAIKOVSKY. Now, I love this cover, but I think the green screen effect might change how it looks a little bit on the actual book, but that's why we have this nice background, so hopefully you still get to enjoy it. Now, what is this book all about? Well, the premise is that in the future, humans are able to travel between planets. And there is a planet that they want to colonize and infect with a nanovirus, which is going to speed up evolution. But something goes wrong. I'm going to keep it quite vague because this is a spoiler-free review, but something goes wrong, and unbeknownst to them, spiders on this planet become infected with the nanovirus. Now, in the future, things are not going so well for humanity. Humans are now traveling not so much just to expand and to grow, but more out of necessity for survival. And these future humans come across this planet. Now, how the story is told is, it is split into two parts. It goes back and forth between the spiders on the planet with the nanovirus and the humans in the future. So we kind of get this interesting combination, two different types of stories. A story of evolution with the spiders and a story of survival with the humans, which I think is a really interesting way to tell this story. Now, I want to talk about some of the characters, some of the human characters, starting off with Dr. Kern. She is kind of behind a lot of the things that go on, and she's a bit of an egomaniac. She has big ideas, a grand sense of self, and she's quite a prominent character in the book, but I could have actually done with even more Dr. Kern. I thought she was really, really interesting. Had a great perspective. Arguably the lead character is Holston. The story, a large part of the story is told from his perspective, and in a way he is kind of like us, the audience, because he's quite passive. On the ship, he is a language specialist. So he's not really in control, he's not a captain, and he's kind of reacting to a lot of the things that are going on, kind of like us. And as the story goes on though, he does develop more of a personality, more of a motive, and I like the progression that his character takes. And he interacts with a character named Lane, who is the chief engineer, and she's a great character because the relationship that Holston and Lane have, I think, subverts a lot of male-female relationships in literature and other forms of entertainment, and I really like the direction that she took and their relationship went within the book. And there's a lot of characters, but I just want to touch on one more main one. Commander Guyan, if that's how you pronounce it. He's a fun character because he's kind of like an at-all costs type of guy, which could lead to him being a little bit one-dimensional, but his character takes an interesting turn in the book, which I think really benefits the plot. I really like what they did with the commander. Now, those are the human characters. There are spider characters, but I don't want to mention too much about them just because I don't want to get into spoiler territory, but suffice to say, I actually like the spiders more than the humans. I know a lot of you out there might be like, oh, I don't really like spiders. Yeah, spiders can be pretty scary, but I promise you, even if you don't like the spiders as much as you like the humans, I'm pretty sure you'll find them just as interesting. So, the reasons behind that are some of the thematic things that the book explores. This book is very rich in terms of the concepts and ideas that it delves into. So I want to go through some of those. One of which is evolution. And the way that this book explores evolution is from the perspective of, well, how does different technology, culture, biology, how does technology and biology influence culture, influences a species development? Because something that the book does really well is it draws parallels between the humans' evolution and the spiders' evolution. You can certainly see some mapping there, but what I really liked was the points that were unique to the spiders. So for example, female spiders are larger than male spiders. So how does that affect gender dynamics, and how is that different from the way that humans interact with each other? And there's lots of little nuggets about that you kind of, the book will take you to a place that seems familiar and then take you to somewhere new with the spiders, which I really, really loved. Another aspect that the book dives into is religion and the concept of God. And if a species evolves on a different planet with different technology, different biology, different culture, well, how does that impact their perspective of religion? How does that develop? What do they perceive to be God? How do they perceive that? And, what's that spiritual relationship like? And I thought that was really, really, really rich in this book. Another one is a connection between generations. So I think about my connection to history more broadly, and then in recent history, my own actual family generations and connections, and how that has a direct or indirect impact upon me. Well, what this book does is it gives a literal device to generational connection. And I thought that was so fascinating to view those connections in a different way. It reminded me of the book Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. This idea of generational memory, and the way it tackles it in this book is from a different angle, but I really love that concept in that book, and I really enjoyed it in this one too. The idea of educational learning, knowledge, memories, experiences passed through the generations, and how that affects both individuals and the community, I thought was definitely one of the strongest aspects of this book. And finally, empathy. How do people connect to each other? How do species connect to each other? What makes us similar and what makes us different? And what's most important? I mentioned in my Fall of Hyperion review that a concept in that book changed me as a person. And I think this book gives a physical representation of a philosophical idea that was so beautiful to me that it really hit me deep, really hit me hard, and I thought was such a special and beautiful way of interpreting emotional connections between species, between people. And if you like sci-fi books with big ideas which have sort of grand ideas of time and space, distances, technologies, and is able to connect those to something really simple and personal and specific, I think you're going to love this book. I think the way it ties those things together was a real artistic success. I think this book has achieved something really, really special, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. So I think from the way that I'm talking about it, you can tell this is going to be a pretty good review, but there is the ending. I want to briefly touch on the ending, spoiler free of course, before we give the rating. And the first 2/3 of this book are a little slow. I really enjoyed it, but it takes its time with this evolutionary world building and the character development, and then it just smacks you in the final third. I feel like this is one of the most satisfying endings to a book that I've ever read, because of the way it ties up the plot and hits you with those emotional themes that I was talking about. I think this is a true success with the ending of this book. So there is a sequel, but I think this ties enough of the plot together that it almost feels like a standalone book, or you could just read it as a standalone book. But the world is rich enough that I could see you diving back in there, Adrian Tchaikovsky finding somewhere else for the story to go. But even though the world continues, I think the story you'll find to be pretty satisfyingly wrapped up in Children of Time. So what's my rating? I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. A super high score. I'm being very picky though, just taking off that tiny half a mark, just because I think it takes a little bit to get going, and not all of the human characters, the relationships, the storylines are quite as strong as some of the others, and as strong as the spider storylines, but teeny tiny gripe. 9.5. Absolutely one of my favorite books I've read recently. You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb, a little bit of a hot take. Best book that I've read that was written in the last decade. No, there's lots of books out there, so that could be toppled. But out of the books that have been released in the last 10 years, I'm going to go ahead and say Children of Time, number 1. So there you go. If you haven't read it, let me know if you're interested in picking it up. Who is this suitable for? I would recommend this to pretty much anyone who is interested in sci-fi. My only warnings are some of the technological and evolutionary world building is a little technical. It's fairly hard sci-fi, so if that's not so much your thing, this might not be the book for you. And it's a little... I think slow is unfair, but if you like a more action-paced type story, you know, this is around 600 pages, so it's a little bit of a commitment, but other than that, I think pretty much every sci-fi fan is going to enjoy this. Where am I going? I'm rambling because I love the book so much. Yes, everyone should read it. Yes, if you haven't read it, let me know if I've sold you on it. If you have already read it, let me know in the comments. What did you think of the book? And favorite sci-fi book of the last 10 years? Let me know. Is it Children of Time or is it something else? Let me know in the comments. I'm fired up, guys. I hope you're fired up too. Hope you enjoyed the review, and stay tuned for another sci-fi book review coming soon.